live from the Harmon Solar Studios on 1580 The Fanatic.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event.
And Wednesday night, 6 p.m., we got the main event for you here tonight. Got Steve McCollum, Adam Michaels. How you doing tonight, brother?
I'm doing good, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing all right tonight. I already tripping over my words. Not a good sign here. But definitely join us here at the Napa text line at 888-368-1580. Of course, we're in the Harmon Solar Studios. Adam, let's get into this tonight. We got a lot to go on. We have Scott Merkin joining us here about 6:20, MLB.com writer, discuss some baseball-related topics.
And since you took over NASCAR last week, I'm going to take over White Sox this week. So
yeah, he is a White Sox beat writer, so everybody knows. So Adam's going to kind of probably take that over a little bit. But those of you that know me and listen to the podcast and have followed us for a while, you know that I'm more into the baseball side. More into the management side, all that good stuff, whereas Adam is more of the X and O's type of guy. But Adam, starting off the season here, or the show off here, I guess I should say, I wanted to touch on this. It's old news now, but you were a huge fan of this. I have a hat of the DC Defenders. I'm wondering if it's going to go and become a collector's item. How do you feel about this XFL deal?
You know, I'm very sad about this XFL deal. I thought that they put on a good product for what they had. I thought it was inventive. I thought that they, it's a shame because it had ratings, it had the fans, and to hear that people, crapping on it like they did the first time, I think it's a totally different thing. And I'm really sad because I really think that without this virus that they would have been successful. They would have finished the year. I mean, this week would have been with the playoffs would have started this week, and then the championship was following that.
Yeah, it's coming up. I don't know the exact dates.
And it's just a shame that it all happened that way.
So I know you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, but I think the problem that a lot of people got into with the XFL was they were comparing it to the NFL.
Right. You couldn't compare it to the NFL. You had to take it for what it was. It was football. America loves football. And it wasn't going to be your top-rated football, but you got some guys that signed it up with the contracts and did a good job. And they're moving on to the NFL. It could have been a good feeder league eventually. I mean, there could have been things that could have happened with this league, and it's a shame. And I understand the business side of it, and they had to probably do this, being the first year. And Vince McMahon was prepared to lose a lot of money, but I don't think he was prepared to lose a lot of money there, prepared to lose a lot of money on the other side of things that he had going on. So I think it was just a compilation of everything that was going on.
Well, you're seeing the byproduct of this right now, right? Hockey teams are furloughing employees now. It's hard to keep paying people when you have zero income when you're expecting income.
Right, and you have teams that you think about the millionaire, billionaire owners, right, and all the people that they're paying, and all of a sudden now you're starting to see that they're backstepping now. Now it's affecting major sports, not just the XFL. Obviously, the National Hockey League or the NBA is not going to file bankruptcy and go out of business anytime soon. But on the same level, you have to, any new business may be suffering the same fate as the XFL.
Well, absolutely. If you don't have the funding behind it, and let's just take this into Vince McMahon's other dealings here with the WWE. They've continued to go. They film their shows. They have live shows on. Everybody's watching it. WrestleMania, by all accounts, had huge ratings, huge follow-up. They had sponsorships that they normally don't have for WrestleMania this year, like in the program,
and still lost almost. It reported, $50 million?
And the point behind this, and we're going to talk about this in the last segment, with sports coming back with no fans on, it's a huge detriment. WWE was furloughing and laying off and canceling contracts of not just wrestlers today, and a lot of them were wrestlers you don't see a lot of. They just had contracts that were getting paid.
Right, and a lot of this, and you go behind the scenes, a lot of these people that they did let go today were behind the scenes guys, and the talent that they did let go today was people that weren't A stars. You had a couple A stars.
Rusev,
I'm saying you had a couple A stars, but a lot of this was these guys signed like Mike and Maria Kanellis. They signed deals. Their deal was signed just to keep them away from AEW, and now Vince is having to let these guys go that he signed as a protective measure, and now he's letting him go. And that's a lot of these let goes today attributed to that.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. And there's no danger of them going to AEW right now because they can't.
Right, they're not going to sign nobody.
They can't.
There's no
afford
reason
to. Do it.
They're not even doing live production. Everything they have is in the can for the next 5 weeks.
Yeah, so they're basically shut down also. But I mean, you're paying. If you think about it, they paid everybody for WrestleMania. They paid everybody for their first live show on Monday night. All the wrestlers, the cameramen, production guys, everything. And those are going over, so they're just getting their standard, TV contracts for that. It's not additional money with the pay-per-view like WrestleMania was, and they're still losing a ton of money. So you're seeing this in a lot of these startup leagues just aren't going to survive this, just like a lot of businesses.
No, you're 100% right. I mean, the WWE is obviously not in the financial dyers that the XFL was, and it comes out that WWE actually owned 22% of. And that was on the down low for a while. No one actually knew that.
He denied it, and the only reason it came out was because he filed for bankruptcy. That league filed for bankruptcy. But it's a separate deal. So he kept the headquarters open. There's still a skeleton staff of executives in there to keep it going. Rumors are that the league's up for sale. There's a lot of rumors going on about it, but I don't see, the word is it's weird. I don't understand it because usually when you go out of business, you just shut your doors, file for bankruptcy, liquidate, and move on. But it's like he's fighting to keep all this stuff going.
Well, but this is Vince's passion project, right? I mean, this is his dream. He brought this back after it failed, like horrendously failed the first time.
But he's a shrewd businessman by far, where he, like him or not, he's in the Donald Trump mode where he does whatever it takes, whatever is available to him in the business world. And a lot of people think it's shady and a lot of people don't like it, but that's the way he is. And that's the way he operates his businesses. And that's what he's doing right now. And it's hard to see what's going to come out on the other end of it because we are in this weird position right now where it's not a standard. If the XFL were to file for bankruptcy, and we were in normal times right there, we all would have said, whoa, like this is bad. And now it's bad. Like confusing messages and things like that.
Just, I want to get your guys' opinion on this. It's an article that I saw on the XFLnewsroom.com. And it's saying that both and there's an interest in the NFL buying out the XFL as a feeder league. And do you see that as a possibility? Because I mean, the structure's in place. Is that something that the NFL would actually go ahead and do, you think?
Well, I don't know if the NFL will buy it, but that's the thing that a spring league needs to be. It needs to be a feeder league. Look, they have how many guys now have signed with the NFL to go to be on a roster? 7, 8?
Yeah, you got 7 or 8, and I mean, we're early too.
Yeah, and I think that's how spring football is going to survive if it's going to go, is it needs to be a feeder league for the NFL. And then you got NFL, you got the NFLPA. They have to negotiate that. There's a lot of things involved in that. And I would like to see it. I would have liked whether the AAF or the XFL needs to be a feeder league for the NFL, work in conjunction with them, because you're not going to get guys talented. Like when they come out of college, right, and they're 20, 21, they might not be at their peak. But if they're not on an NFL roster, they're going to not improve, right? But if they go into a league like that in the springtime and play, they're going to improve. In theory, some of those guys are going to improve and become NFL players over time, which is going to help the league in general. The question is, though, that's a lot of money for the NFL owners and everybody to put into those leagues. So you have to consider that also.
Out to the Napa Auto Parts text line at 888-368-1580. Skull texts in and says, what if the NFL created the coronavirus to end the XFL? Ooh, that's a conspiracy we'll have to look into.
Yeah, that would be amazing because the NFL wasn't. I mean, the XFL was just a blip on the radar to the NFL on there, unless they were doing that shrewd business move where they were taking them so they could buy them for pennies on the dollar and take it over, right?
No. So the first time the XFL had this nasty stigmatism behind it, right? You thought XFL and you thought disaster, terrible, the worst thing that ever happened to football, right? This time go around, does it leave with a better legacy now? Even though it lasted less, does it leave with a better legacy?
Whether it leaves with a better legacy or not doesn't matter because it's gone. And it was 5 games.
Yeah, that's true. I feel better about the XFL this time around. Like,
Yeah, but that
I feel better for it.
That
you
and
know?
a cup of coffee will wake you up in the morning.
That's true.
Like, that's all you're going to get out of it. No, I don't disagree. I think they went in with a better mindset. I think they went in with a better deal. But like they said, the thing that hurt them, I've said this in the podcast and then also on this radio show, that it was just hard to root for a guy that you don't remember playing in college because he left college in 2013 and now he's the starting quarterback for an XFL team. They needed to get to that point in year 2 or year 3 where we knew those college players that didn't make the NFL, but we remember them from last year's college football, right?
So if there's an actual NFL feeder league, does that hurt college football? Because if you're a player that's 19, 20 years old and you can go into the feeder system and get paid, don't you do that if you're really just determined that you're going to be a football player?
I would assume that the NFL rules will continue where you have to be 3 years out of high school before you can go.
Okay.
I would assume that would continue if it's a feeder league for the NFL and the NFL has any ownership in it. Football is a violent sport.
Oh, it is definitely a violent sport.
Even if you're going up against guys that have been out of college for 5-6 years, their bodies are stronger, better, more muscular than the college kids are. So even just in that league, you're going to go up against guys that are bigger, stronger, just because of body makeup. You're that way when you're 25, 26 with that background as opposed to a college kid. So no, it's not going to be like basketball with one and done. I don't think you're not going to see guys go there instead of going to college. I don't think. But who knows? You never know, right? You never know how it shakes out.
Yeah, you don't. But I definitely think eventually we're going to see an actual feeder league in the NFL, and it's something that I'm looking forward to eventually that they actually do, because I think spring football is a thing that could work.
So many people hate spring football, and the reason they give is it's not as good as the NFL, and it drives me batty because it's not the same league. Quit comparing the two leagues. They aren't the same. They aren't going to be the same. That's like comparing minor league baseball to major league baseball. It's not the same. Nobody expects it to be the same, but there's just this absolute hatred for spring football for some reason. With a lot of blue checkmark people on Twitter, holy cow.
Oh,
And they were going nuts about it. They were like rejoicing on the grave of the XFL, and it was like, you have that much hatred for spring
between
football?
Twitter, the radio, the TV, you were just like, you would have thought like they got that a murderer died or something, just the way this was portrayed. But I'm a little sad that the XFL is gone. Rest in peace, part 2.
There will not be a third, I assume. No, I mean,
well, you never know with Vince. I mean, he may come back at 85 and decide that we're going to do this a third time.
Well, I mean, the sign of what he's doing is in with these WWE moves he made today, for instance. That's the sign, is he's bleeding cash, not for his fault on his own. He's trying to give us entertainment. He's trying to give you new entertainment. They just literally changed the rules in Florida so he could go back to live shows on Saturday or Friday?
Yeah, Friday.
And so he could do live shows again. And that's all in an effort for him to get revenue coming in. And we'll talk about this at the end of the segments here because we're going to talk Major League Baseball after the break here. But, I mean, I have a whole pointed point here on things coming back too early and what the financial hit that these owners are going to take by coming back with no fans in the league and everything.
No, and I'm really looking forward to getting into that later on in the hour here. It's a special day today, though. It is number 42 day here.
Right?
Jackie Robinson Day.
I will say that it is the one day on baseball that I make sure I watch a game for a regular season game early in the year. Normally, I'll just watch a team I like or if there's a good matchup up. But everybody wears the number 42. Everybody. And it's just spectacular to see it out there. I just enjoy it for that reason. 'Cause everybody's the same is the whole motif behind it. But who was the last Major League Baseball player to wear 42? Because he wore it after they retired, obviously, the number, because he was in the league already.
Yeah, it's gotta be Mario Rivera, right?
For the Yankees?
For the Yankees.
Reliever? Yeah, and he just retired, 2013, 2012?
Yeah, he went because he came in the league in 95. They retired Jackie in 97.
I didn't look this up, Eric, but do you know when they retired the 42 everywhere?
I think it was like 2010. I'll have to take a look at that.
Yeah, no, I was just curious, but it was definitely late 2000. It wasn't like 2000 because he came in the league in 95, 96?
95.
Yeah, so I think that just is testament to how long he played. Mariano Rivera played in the league at such a high level.
Yeah,
That's
no,
kind of shocking.
So do you think that this day should have been rescheduled? That should be a reschedule, or is it just the 15th is the 15th and they just do it that way?
I think it's such a special day in baseball lore. If baseball is going to be a traditional league where stats matter and things like this matter, you have to reschedule it, don't you, when they start playing again? But it doesn't have to be, because today's the day where he broke into the league, was his first game. But you can pick another big day. Pick a day where, what was that in the 1955 World Series where he stole home on Yogi Berra and, things like that. You could pick a day like that and do it on that day. There's so many special days with him that you could look at that way on that type of a deal. So, but one stat I did learn today that I wanted to talk about a little bit, Adam, as we're getting ready to go to the break here, is Jackie Robinson stole home 19 times in his career.
That is a phenomenal stat that I would have never thought, because you think of stealing home, and I don't think 19 times. It's usually by mistake it happened.
Well, exactly. So when we come back from the break here, as you take us out, Adam, I have another question for you as we get Scott Merkin on the phone here when we come back to talk a little bit more baseball.
You're listening to the main event right here on 1580 The Fanatic.
No one covers sports like the main event.
And we're back here at the main event in the Harmon Solar Studios here at 1580 The Fanatic, also on 99.3 FM. Really quick, the Napa text line, 888-368-1580. Adam, when we went to break while we're waiting for Scott Merkin to join us here with MLB.com, we were talking about Jackie Robinson, and I brought up that now stealing home isn't an official MLB record. So I've seen 20. I've seen the number 19. So apparently people have gone back through the archives to get these. But here's the deal. He's got 19 of them, and one of them was really famous in the World Series with Yogi Berra and stuff. But he isn't even close to being the leader of stealing home runs. Do you know who the leader is?
No, I have no idea.
Do you know how many? Do you guess how many?
20,
he's not even close.
Not even close. All right, so 45?
Yeah, 54.
Hey, that was pretty close.
Yeah, Ty Cobb, 54. So isn't that amazing? Now, when was
but
the last
the game has changed, though, right?
That's what I'm getting at is, when was the last time you saw anybody steal? I did some research, and it was kind of hard to find, but Lourdes Gurriel Jr., I think is how you say it, in April 9th, 2019, stole home base.
Nice.
It's amazing how the game has changed, right?
Yeah, it is definitely amazing how the game has changed. And we're going to go out to the Napa Auto Parts hotline and welcome in Scott Merkin from MLB.com. He's a beat writer for the last 18 years for my Chicago White Sox. How's it going, Scott?
Good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing good. Thanks for joining us.
Sure, no problem.
Hey, so how are you spending your free time? I mean, this has got to be unusual for you, right?
Yeah, we're doing a lot of writing. We're doing a lot, like one series, just an example we've had is like me naming the top 5 at each position. And shortstops this week, and if you said you're a Sox fan, and that's I'm curious what your take on the top 5 is. The top 2 are pretty easy there in Luke Epling and Louis Aparicio, and then there's like 6 candidates for the final 3, I think, in the next next 3 group. But we're doing a bunch of that kind of stuff, that kind of and then some interviews of players and that kind of thing. But they're really, after a while, what more can they say than we're working out, spending family time, playing video games, trying to stay healthy. That's it.
Yeah, I had to disagree with you a little bit on your third baseman. I had Joe Creedy as number 1.
Yeah, Creedy was an underrated player, and I think he gets extra points because of the fact that, he was so good in the playoffs. He was absolutely, in my mind, from start to finish in over 12 games, was the MVP in the 2005 playoffs for the White Sox. They don't give one for the entire playoffs, obviously, but he was that valuable. But I think you can't go wrong. I think that one was, 3 clear choices again. Creedy, Ventura, and Melton, and then, other good guys, but it was harder to kind of fill out the 5. Whereas shortstop, there's going to be some guys who aren't going to make it that are pretty darn good.
Yeah, that is very true. The White Sox have had some great shortstops. I was looking at I was reading the articles that you had posted on WhiteSox.com and enjoyed thinking of it. And it's like anytime I hear Creedy, I hear Hawk going wild in my head for some reason every time. It's just one of those things that I hear. So I think it might have been like a little bit of my fascination with Joe Creedy at the time. He was very adamant about it. So
yeah, I saw Joe in September, the Pogosky family does a charity softball game where they raise, a lot of good money for charity between ex-Cubs and ex-Sox players. And, it's pretty low-key, and I think they have a home run hitting contest, too, and they usually have a get-together the night before, and I happened to be off that night, so I saw Joe was in town for it along with Jermaine Dye, and I think John Garland was there and some Cub guys, but Joe looks okay. Joe's, I think he's a gentleman farmer out in Missouri right now. I haven't talked to him during this break, but he was typical Joe Creedy in good spirits when I saw him back in September.
We got Scott Merkin joining us from MLB.com and WhiteSox.com here with Adam and Steve. Steve, on the other side here's got a couple things for you. Yeah,
Adam's the diehard White Sox fans, as you just learned, because I know the names that he just rattled off, but I'm just not the diehard like that. But I'm more on the baseball side here. So you said you've talked to some players who say they're working out. This kind of leads to my questions with this unexpected break we've had. I talked to Cole Hamels a couple years ago, and he said he uses the whole spring training to stretch out. So every single one of his starts during spring training means something to him. Now, what I'm curious about is these players that were stretching out, 2 weeks before the start of the season gets shut down. We're now on a break for basically an extra 2 extra months here now. What's the expectation for when baseball does start to come back, for these pitchers to be able to stretch out and be ready to start with the stretching and then shutting it down again so fast?
Well, you make a good point, and that's one of the many issues to be tackled. James McCann was on a conference call with the White Sox beat writers last week. The White Sox catcher was an All-Star last year, in the mix with Yasmani Grandal this year. And he was talking about how it was a lot easier to kind of, when you're doing, because this is basically like another off season for players, it really is. You're, the facilities are, except in the off season, you probably do have access to these facilities that are closed right now for the most part. But he said in the off season, you had a target to go for. You knew that you were going to arrive in spring training February 12th or February 14th, and then, position players shortly thereafter and games start up. He said, you don't know anything right now. Maybe, at some point in the future they will. That's, just really impossible to guess at this point. But they're going to have to give themselves time, because besides, this insidious pandemic we're going through, you don't want to have a rash of, 8, 9, 10, whatever players hurt by kind of rushing their way back. And that would really, forget about the product and decreasing the product. It's not fair to these guys, So spring training is certainly not going to be like a week and then be done. I don't know anything for a fact. No one's really told me anything, and I don't know if, except for the very higher ups, really know anything, period. But, you would think it's going to have to be, 2-3 weeks. And Lucas Giolito talked about this at an interview in a Chicago radio station here about, that pitcher, they were down to the last, 10 days, I guess, of spring training, maybe 11 and 12 days when everything was shut down. But nonetheless, there's still more work to be done in between starts and everything else. And then plus you have nothing but downtime. Even if you are throwing off your, off the side of your house in the backyard or whatever, you set up, a fake pitching mound in the background. So, there's going to be not just hitters, pitchers, everyone's going to need probably, 3 weeks, a month to get ready and really get going again, so you can, avoid guard against injury as much as possible. But you're right, though. There is a plan. I know White Sox pitching coach Don Cooper, who's done this forever. It might be the most senior pitching coach in the game, actually, off the top of my head. That they don't really give us, opening day or whatever until it moves on a little bit in the spring training. But trust me, he lays things out. The minute he knows who's going to be in the rotation, who's got a shot in the bullpen, he starts laying the schedule out, because you can't go haphazard. You have to adjust on the fly if guys get hurt or guys need an extra day. But it's not like you can show up on a Monday and say, okay, I think we'll have so-and-so pitch this week. Let's get them ready, So you're right. There is a set schedule, and they're going to have to redo this, not redo it, but, probably do more than just finish off spring training if and when they come back.
And so my focus was on the pitching side, but then I started thinking, a lot of these batters at the end of a season, they'll go to Dominican League, they'll go to winter ball, things like that. So they continue batting. They go to batting cages. All of that's shut down right now. Also, is there any concern with these guys coming back and having to basically start? I'm assuming most players don't have batting cages in their houses, and they're not hitting as much as they would like to right now. Does batting come back a little bit easier?
I think it's interesting, because I think more players have access than you would think to. I don't know if they all have, the state-of-the-art hitting cage that I've never seen it. I've never been to his house, but that Paul Konerko had in his place. But yeah, I think they more have access than you would think. But again, it's all part of the same big picture. You got to let these guys have time to come back, and maybe more so than just balancing out what the final. The Sox played their last game. I want to say, let's see, they played it on March 13th was a Friday, so March 10th was their last game because they had a game on the 11th that was rained out, and they had an off day on the 12th. So, I mean, you're talking about what, who knows when it comes back, but right now we're talking about already 5 weeks of inactivity, right? Or 5 weeks of unguided activity. How about that? They're probably not inactive, but not any kind of set plan. So you're going to have to kind of ramp things up again, and you got to work it gradually back in. You can't just go from 1 to 100 in 30 seconds. You got to kind of work it out.
So we saw going into the spring training, there was hefty expectations for the White Sox.
Right.
What you saw for the first, we have 3-4 weeks of spring training, were they in line? Do you think the White Sox are a contender when we start going here?
Yeah, I mean, man, it's hard to even remember back. No, I'm kidding. I can remember back then, but I mean, it seems like a different season at this point, doesn't it? It's been so long ago, but yeah, I mean, they had that vibe to them. You don't want to compare it to a championship team or a division winner because this team has not even finished over 500 since 2012, so it's kind of a stretch. But you could just see something was coming together with that group, with the young players, the great young players they have in Jimenez and Moncada and Anderson and Giolito and Cease, and I'm going to leave someone out, but they know the whole group. And then adding some key veterans like Keuchel and Grandal and Encarnacion. So, and then Abreu, of course, is key coming back. And you could just see kind of a fit forming there. Now, again, Minnesota won 101 games last year. The Cleveland Indians were a very good team as well. Kansas City and Detroit still early on in their latest rebuild, so they're probably not going to be competitive. But I think they could have competed for. I mean, and who knows? They still may will, and who knows what's going to happen if baseball does pick up again. But I think they were certainly closer to the top echelon now in Minnesota and Cleveland than they are to the bottom one in Detroit and Kansas City. So I think there was potential. I wouldn't say they were a lead pipe. They weren't the Dodgers, where anything short of the World Series would be a disappointment. But they certainly, for the first time in a long time, were a team that you could say, at the very least, this team's going to play meaningful baseball in September.
Which leads me to my deal, because you just talked about the White Sox and the expectations, from what I'm gathering, just isn't expected to change at all once the season restarts. Is that going to be the way it's going to be across Major League Baseball for the most part, or when you're talking to your coworkers that work for other teams, everybody's expectations will be the same for their teams, or is there possible that there's going to be some unexpected variables involved, and some people are kind of focusing on that and maybe downgrading their teams or even upgrading their teams a little bit in this time off?
I mean, you really just don't know, right? I mean, it's just so hard to answer right now because this is completely uncharted territory and water. I mean, it's just hard to predict. I know some people have tried to assess, like, well, the Sox have a younger team, so maybe they would be easier to come back. I just don't think anyone knows. Anyone knows how this is going to be handled or what the plan eventually is going to be. So it would be difficult to say. I think, good teams are still going to have the good players there, and barring injuries, they still should be competitive, but we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out when the time comes.
Yeah, before this had all happened, my one roster spot question was Carson Fulmer being out of options. Did you see enough out of him in the spring that he would have made that you would think that he would make the roster coming out of spring training?
Yeah, he looked pretty good in spring. And again, you can't fall too in love with the spring performances and that kind of thing. But I think in that spot where they have it, I'm not downgrading Carson at all. He's a talented kid. It just hasn't clicked for him yet. I think with him being out of options and with him having a pretty good spring, and they know him and they know his talent, that in that spot, he wasn't going to be closer. He wasn't going to be setup man. He was going to be more of a middle innings guy or a long reliever type with some other guys in that pen. So I think he made sense as the eighth reliever on that team, at least to break camp with the team. He made sense to me as the last guy. They have a pretty strong bullpen. Colomé, Marshall, Bummer's one of the more underappreciated. I think he'll be not underappreciated because he's so young and really had one big season, but I think he will be more greatly appreciated as time goes on and seasons go on here. But they have a very solid staff. Adding Steve Cishek was a great move for them. So I think, I don't want to say can carry Fulmer, but I think Fulmer makes sense in the big picture as that eighth guy out of the bullpen. And who knows if who knows what the rules will be if and when baseball does come back, if there's, even more guys allotted out of that bullpen. No one knows at this point.
Yeah, nobody knows, and I'm for one looking forward to when baseball does come back in whatever form they decide to bring it back to us. I've been playing my MLB The Show quite a bit too much at this point, but wanted to go ahead and get you on, Scott, and get your insight, and thank you for your time here. You can follow Scott at Scott Merkin. Check him out on WhiteSox.com and MLB.com. Thanks for your time, Scott. We much appreciate it.
Sure, I think everyone wants sports to be back, but I think everyone wants to be healthy and safe is the main thing overall right now. That's the key thing for everyone, right?
Definitely,
Absolutely.
Scott. Be safe for your family. Be
Very
well,
good.
too, my friend. That's Scott Merkin of MLB.com joining the main event here on 1580 The Fanatic. Steve, thoughts? Interesting, right? I mean,
Yeah, quit trying to show everybody up with all these names you're making up.
Hey, now when I can say a name properly, I like to go for it.
You know what? We talked about this before. In 05, we didn't know each other back in 05, but I remember very well. I have some really good friends back when I worked in the corporate world that were big White Sox and big Cubs fans from Chicago, and I remember telling them, "Watch out for this 05 team. Like, they're going to shock some people." And they laughed at me, and then they of course went on to win it. And I don't have that same feeling for this team this year. They're kind of quiet under the radar. They are super young, which kind of worries you. But I agree with you. They do have a lot of talent. It'll be interesting to see, especially in that division, because the variable in that division, of course, is the Twins.
Yeah, the Twins are and that was the one thing that I said earlier today. I'm like, I would love to say that the Central is the White Sox, but man, that American League Central with what the Twins have done in the offseason makes me want to question things and kind of slow down just a little bit. But man, when we get into it, I'll be ready. That's for sure.
Yeah, and that's the thing right. The Twins are good, then they're not, then they're good, then they're not, and then they're not, and then they're good. And that's just a byproduct of it's like us Diamondback fans. They have a surprise year. Because last year was kind of a surprise for the Twins. Nobody expected them to really be up there.
101 wins last year. I did not expect that at all.
I follow a couple Twins beat writers on Twitter, and why I don't know I do. I enjoy them. But even last year, they were all just totally shocked at what was going on with that team.
No, they were. So I asked you a question earlier in the day about the Cubs and the Indians, since we're just on baseball here.
Yep.
So I need to go out to the resident Cub fan and ask Eric this question. All right, Eric, are you ready for this one? It's a big one.
Shoot.
All right, so if the rain delay does not happen in the World Series, do the Cubs win that game?
Well,
As a Cub fan, do they win that game?
I actually asked Terry Francona about this when I interviewed him in February, and I actually don't think they would have won the game. He disagreed. He said it had no impact, or at least he wasn't blaming it. I think it had all the. It's the only reason they won the game.
He's not going to blame. He's not going to blame. As a competitor, he's not going to blame it. But I said to Adam, I said the issue was Cubs were kind of discombobulated when that went right, and then they got an hour to go back and recompose themselves.
20 minutes.
Oh, 20 minutes, whatever. It might as well have been an hour, but it gives them enough. That would be like in the fourth quarter of a basketball game, Game 7 of the NBA playoffs. 3 seconds to go and the lights go off, right? And the teams have to go back to their locker room for 20 minutes, while they turn the lights back on and everything gets back again. That's a huge advantage for the team that's down and that's struggling, because you have the advantage at that point going forward. So no, I agree with that.
And apparently the rumor is, and I heard this from a source, that Miguel Montero told someone that Jason Hayward held a players-only meeting at that point, and it was a screw Joe Madden meeting. And that's what helped do it during that 20-minute period.
You just keep going. Come on. Yeah, because Montero wasn't getting playing time or anything. He was awful. He was awful for them.
Madden managed one of the worst games I've ever seen in
Oh,
my
I
life.
know. Here we go.
Jesus.
Don't even get me started on this, Madden.
888-368-1580 is an F. Auto Park text line. Beer Bob joined us, says, good evening, guys. Happy hump day.
Evening, Beer Bob.
What a sad Black Wednesday for the WWE. Yeah, we talked about that in the first segment, Beer Bob. Very sad day for the WWE. Those guys losing their gig and with nothing really to go to at this point.
I mean, you still have Impact Wrestling they could go to once it comes back up.
But presently,
right
there's
now,
nothing to go to. There's nowhere to go.
You know what I'm most curious about that, wrapping back to that, Beer Bob, is what does their contract say when it's canceled? Do they get a severance? I'm assuming there's a severance in there. I'm assuming there's a payoff for them to go.
Right. Well, there's usually the 90-day no-compete where they get their what they call minimum downside.
Yeah.
So they'll get that unless, but it depends how their contract's worded. A lot of them are, that they are, what they say is if they wish you well, like if you're immediate release, that means you get nothing, but you can go wherever you want.
Yeah.
So all these guys are probably on their 90-day no compete. But when we come back, Steve, let's get into your thoughts on the media and sports
theories.
rejoining and theories, and we'll do all that next here on the main event on 1580 The Fanatic.
Call your sons, call your daughters, call your friends, call your neighbors.
Old school beats new school.
The main event.
And welcome back to the main event here on 1580 The Fanatic, also on 99.3 FM in the Harmon Solar Studios. Reach out here at the Napa text line at 888-368-1580.
Extra Cheese checks in, says, being a Sox fan, I had a hard time cheering for Cleveland, but I died a little inside when the Cubs won that World Series. Yeah, part of me is still dead on that one, Extra Cheese.
All right. And, of course, we have an intern on the text line. She really enjoys, I know it's a she, but she says, rest in peace, the DC Defenders hat.
Well, it's not necessarily dead. I mean, it still has life.
Well, she said it'll make a good prop in the podcast. So if you've seen the podcast, we have stuff behind us and stuff like that in our podcast studios at gestaltproduction.com on there. So she's absolutely right. It'll look good in there. It'll be a little thing. Of course, it's not going to value, but it was pretty expensive. And you looked last week on Saturday's show, and you looked, and there was no discounts yet on any supplies.
That was before the bankruptcy filing.
That's
so we'll
true.
have to. I'm going to go to the shopxfl.com website right now, and I'll let you know.
Right. So it was great to have Scott on from MLB.com just to kind of get, somebody that's in the, quote unquote clubhouse of Major League Baseball and has the resources there and people he's talking to get his thoughts on that. And, it's just interesting as we talk about this because we have some examples of sports, Adam, that are starting to come back because they're just trying to stay relevant, right? They're trying to give people new stuff. For instance, iRacing. And whether you watch it or not, like on Fox, they were getting 1 million viewers for a couple weekends. I haven't checked the last couple. Now you got dirt track racing, iRacing going on. But you've also had controversy, right? A couple weeks ago, Bubba Wallace rage quits in the middle of a game, like 3 laps into a game, quits, and his sponsor, who I won't name because I don't like them. I don't like the way they handled it. But his sponsor goes on Twitter and bashes him and fires him on Twitter. And they were a real-life sponsor for his regular team also. So that's drama right there in iRacing, right? And then this weekend, of course, you got Kyle Larson and his unfortunate comments and inappropriate comments that he does while he's doing iRacing, gets kicked out the iRacing format. All of his sponsors leave him. Chip Ganassi ends up firing him on that side. And it's a real shame because, you shouldn't use language like that at any point in stretch in time. And, Chief mentioned it on I think on one of his tweets to the Blender the other day that, we both know him. We both met him. We both talked to him. We both have spent a little bit of time with him around the dirt track and racetracks.
Yeah, I remember I reached out to you, and I'm like, you know him, don't you?
Yeah.
I wasn't there for it, but I knew hearing you tell stories about him that you had met him.
I've got unlimited video of him in the bullpen after NASCAR races where you ask him questions. All the media's there and you talk to him just in March and everything. And, it just seems – and it was kind of shocking even for me because, like I said, you just don't really know these guys. Like, I don't hang out with them. I don't, call them up on the phone, nothing like that. But – it's always shocking when you find that when somebody does that and then you find out about it. And, and I'm definitely a fan of second chances for anybody that messes up on anything for the most part. You get a second chance on the deal.
Does he get another chance?
He'll get a second chance at some point. Yeah, absolutely.
Is he that good?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The problem is with NASCAR that differs from all the other sports is your sponsors run that sport. So when Chevrolet backtracked from Chip Ganassi, and they so from what I was reading, Chevrolet said that they wouldn't sponsor him, but they'll sponsor the team still with another driver. Same thing with McDonald's. Same thing with a few other posts out there or sponsors out there said the same thing. But and once you're a team like Chip Ganassi, this isn't like Joe Gibbs Racing, right, where they live and die by sponsors. And sponsors aren't easy to come by in NASCAR like you think they are. Sponsors are leaving that sport. Lowe's left last year, things like that. So it's not easy to get those sponsors. And the team had to choose sponsors or Kyle, and they obviously went with sponsors.
Just so you know, Steve, XFL merchandise not on clearance yet.
Not on clearance
No,
yet.
you're paying full rate, so just so you know.
Overpriced rate still.
Shop.xfl.com. Get it while you can.
But the other side of this is, so yeah, basically the whole point of that was just the controversy that's going on with that, right? You have the NBA horse game, which by all accounts, I watched like 5 minutes of it, and then I turned on Die Hard and watched Die Hard because it was so bad. 600,000 people watched it.
Wait, hold on. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Of course.
Okay, that's all I needed to know. That's all I got on that.
All
subject.
I know is it's an awesome movie. It doesn't matter what time of year it is. But 600,000 viewers tuned in. Awful, just gets panned by everybody, right? Saturday Night Live does an at-home version of Saturday Night Live, which I'm not a big Saturday Night Live fan. They do have hit or miss. And I actually tuned in and watched that because I was genuinely curious how they were going to do it and how it was going to be. I thought it was just god-awful horrible. A lot of people on Twitter did as well. There were some people that liked it. And then the WWE no audience side, right? That then you take into account no audience on there, and they're just hemorrhaging money left and right to where they're having to lay people off now, right? So you have to go into the sporting events with these leagues coming back with no fans and things like that. Ticket money of people going in, it's a small amount maybe for some of these leagues, but it's a huge amount with concessions, parking, all of that these guys aren't going to get. They're relying only on television money to come back and play on that.
And that's television money for the most part that they've already gotten, right? I mean, for the most part, those contracts are paid in advance, aren't they?
I think NFL gets it every year. I'm not sure when it's paid out or anything like that.
Well, I mean, like the NBA has already gotten their TV money for
yeah,
the
because
year.
it's the end of the season,
Right.
right?
So
I'm
it's the
assuming.
same with the NHL and
the NHL's, here's the thing you got to worry about. NHL's TV package is god-awful.
Oh, God, yeah, it is.
And so they're going to have to rely on ticket. And if they open up, they got to pay all their players their money. Now, granted, their players don't make as much as the other leagues. But Darren Ravel earlier today tweeted out and said ticket revenue is 75% of the money for college football.
I was going to ask you about this. This was I didn't know who tweeted it out,
Yeah.
but I knew that I saw it and if it was legit.
So it's kind of messed up. It's not exactly right, but I'm going to go into something else here. He said also it's 15% of the money for the NFL. That's why it doesn't pay for college to play without a crowd, and it does pay for the NFL to play anyway, right? Because the NFL has such a big deal, but college football is in a huge deficit. But then a local reporter, Brad Denny here, who follows ASU, he goes into deep things, courtesy of USA Today. He dug into this. ASU's ticket revenue for football was 10.9% of the total athletic revenue. That's just ticket revenue.
Okay.
In 2018, per the USA Today database. U of A's was 14.4%, right? So that's nothing. It's a smaller amount in terms of ticket revenue. It's a small amount, right? But you dig into it more with all these sponsorships and everything. So when you buy ASU tickets, you have to give a donation to the program, which is more than your tickets are, a lot more. So if you add the entirety of the broad quote unquote contributions category, it reaches just 32.9% of the revenue, going into that. And so
Now, is that just a football or is that total?
Just football.
Okay, that's just football.
So college football can't reopen without fans and be successful. They need that ticket revenue.
And is that why
concessions.
we're seeing the plans floated for, late February start? A February start for the football at that point?
I'm thinking nobody's addressed this yet, and this is what I'm curious about. And we won't know this because no owner's going to come out and say it. Are owners willing to come back with no baseball? Are baseball owners who you have big markets and you have tiny markets that struggle to make money every year, even though they do, right? Like the Diamondbacks. Is Ken Kendrick of the Diamondbacks willing to come back and play a season, let's say 50 games with no fans, no ticket revenue, no parking, no concessions, and just TV money, and you pay your players? Yeah, you still have the electricity, right? You still have all those expenses.
Right.
And you're only relying on television money. Is that a viable way to go forward
and you have
for
teams
2-3 months?
And you have teams like Oakland that have no revenue. They have no radio deal.
That's the
We
most
talked about
shocking
that
thing.
earlier. They have no live radio deal.
They do an
are
internet
only
deal, right?
streaming.
Yeah.
They are only streaming their baseball games, which
so-
to me is unbelievable that there's not a Bay radio station that wants to broadcast Oakland Athletics baseball.
Right? And that's kind of where I'm leaning towards on this at this point is, are these owners going to want to expend this amount of money? We're already seeing it with WWE. We've seen it with hockey, with the sport ending. Even if hockey started up today, right, and finished their last 10 games of regular season and went into playoffs, is that going to alleviate all these expenses that these owners have already lost this year? And is it going to mitigate it? Or is it just going to make it worse to do that? Or do you just close down and start the season over in October?
It's one of these things where I don't even know what you do because thinking of it from a business standpoint of the small market teams, it may make sense not to do this.
Ottawa just laid off a bunch of people, and that's a Canadian team. It's a small market, but it's a Canadian team, and they just laid off a bunch of people or furloughed them on there. But, I mean, that's the side nobody's talking about that I don't know who to talk to get this answer. If anybody knows, tweet us out or reach out to me on Twitter, SMAC500 at the Main Event Pod, and let me know who we can go to on this, because I'm fascinated by this side of this story. It's pro football, right? They can play without fans, and they're going to make a ton of TV revenue. But Jerry Jones is also going to lose millions and millions of dollars for every home game, because that stadium sells out. It seats, 50,000 people.
Right.
He gets all the concession revenue.
All the parking.
He gets all the parking around the stadium. We're talking millions of dollars he's going to lose per game and only rely. And I say only. I think every team got like $200 million this year in TV revenue. But that's a huge hit for these owners to take, and they still have to play all the players, still play all their, personnel, coaches, marketing people, all of that stuff. And that's a huge hit that nobody's talking about.
888-368-1580 is the Napa Auto Parts text line. Papa Mike checks in and says, even with a biased White Sox guest, still a good show. Papa Mike, there was nothing biased about that. I didn't hear any bias. Did you? I thought he played it right down the middle.
It sounded like there was no other team in Major League Baseball,
Well,
right?
there's not, Steve. There's just the White Sox.
Right, Papa Mike?
Yeah.
Hey, also, Papa Mike, we saw your tweet earlier, buddy. We appreciate you listening to the podcast from Saturday also. You gave us a little hint that you listened to that with your response there, so we appreciate that, of course. And, of course, everybody can find us at the Main Event Pod on Facebook and Twitter, as well as Podbean, iTunes, all that stuff. We still do a show on Saturday mornings, and this one, the radio show, also goes up on there as well. We've helped promote the radio station and our private stuff on there as well. So
we're 4 days away from the drop of the most anticipated documentary of all time, right?
did you see?
This is the most anticipated
Yes.
documentary, right? It
I
beats OJ.
I never saw it. I do not
You've
watch
never seen the
these.
OJ doc?
No.
Oh, my God.
I lived it. I don't need to see it.
Oh,
I
you have
don't-
to watch it,
I
Steve.
don't care. I know
It's
how
appointment watching.
I know how it comes out. I could care less. I know how it turns out. But yeah, I have never. I mean, I've seen Andre the Giant, right, documentaries. I've seen Hulk Hogan documentaries and stuff that I loved as a kid. Ric Flair, all that stuff. And I don't go, I got to stop and watch this. I can tell you right now.
You're not going to be watching on April 19th.
No,
when
I'm
it
going to
drops.
be watching
Okay,
it.
all right.
I'm going to be watching it.
I was
I'm
worried you weren't.
I'm probably going to watch it again and get it down. I'm probably going to watch it before the next one plays. And it's like a week long, right? Like 10 days or something.
Yeah, there's 10 episodes
Yeah.
of this doc.
I'm going to be paying
docudrama.
attention. I'm so excited for this for multiple reasons. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. But I am so excited to watch this just because, okay, going back to baseball really quick. I watched Kirk Gibson home run in the World Series game the other night. I completely forgot, right, that one, it was the first game. It was the first game of the World Series. For some reason, I was thinking it was a later game.
Right.
First game.
It should have been Game 7 the way it's talked about.
Yeah, right? He goes down. First of all, he can't walk, right? And we all knew that. But then he goes up to bat. He goes down 0-2. He works the count full, 3-2, fouls off a few pitches, everything. And then it's just Dennis Eckersley's throwing to first because he's worried about the guy to steal the second. Just the drama was just amazing. And I was watching it like I was a kid again back in 86. Watching it. Was it 86, I think? Watching it because it was phenomenal how the drama. You don't see. Go to watch the 2001 Diamondbacks deal, and it's not even the same drama. I think that Dodgers one was more stressful for Game 1 than the Diamondbacks one in Game 7. It was weird.
Yeah, it's weird how it's built up, how we're seeing all these older games being replayed and relived. And, you know, I didn't know a lot of them. The college football ones we know.
Yeah.
But the baseball one, I really didn't
You brought
know
it up.
I didn't know it was Game 1. I didn't know it was Game
No,
1, honestly.
right?
I did not know that.
You would totally think it would be an earlier, I don't know, Eric, if you're available in there. Do you remember this game at all? The Kirk Gibson home run in the World Series off Eckersley?
I was 5 years old. I mean,
No, you don't.
obviously,
Yeah.
I've seen it. I know all about it, but I watched part of it the other day.
I was 10, but I remember him hitting it over the fence. I remember how excited everybody was. But just going back and seeing the routine, like, you think he just walked up there with no legs and just hacked at a ball and it just happened to go over, right? But it wasn't like that at all. There was drama. There was guys going to first. It was just amazing. I just highly recommend you go back and watch these highlights that in your mind you think it went one way, and it's even better when you rewatch it.
So we just got a couple minutes left, Steve. So we've seen the PGA announcing first week in June to restart.
If Texas lets them.
If they're allowed to. Is PGA the first? Is NASCAR the first? Who's the first? To me, it's got to be NASCAR. I think NASCAR's the first.
Where's NASCAR saying they're going to run at the end?
I think they're sticking with Charlotte, aren't they? Isn't that the Charlotte race?
Yeah, is it? Okay. That's why I didn't know if they were changing their schedule or not. So here's the deal. It's going to come down to the individual states if you're going to participate. California, you're not doing any sports anytime soon. New York, you're not doing any sports anytime soon. 2 hot spots for this, right?
Right.
But Arizona, other places where it's not a huge hot spot, you'll see it come back first.
Right.
So it's all going to depend on the states. That's all I can answer on that is. I would say NASCAR comes back first because they were shooting for that Memorial Day weekend.
Right, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking it's got to be NASCAR to me. I could be wrong on that Charlotte thing. Maybe Charlotte's the 4th of July race. I can't really remember.
Yeah, they changed their schedule this year, so
Memorial. Okay,
it is Memorial Day. Yeah, so it is Charlotte. But that's the thing. It's going to come down to these states. That's all it is.
Yeah, it's going to come down to this. Next week when we come on the main event show here on 1580 The Fanatic, we're going to get NFL Draft.
NFL Draft Focus next week.
Right.
It starts on
Steve's
Thursday.
going to break down 7 rounds of picks, and he's going to have his mock draft up on the main event pod.
Let's not promise things that aren't going to happen.
It's not happening.
You can
we'll have different news here. You can reach Steve at
SMAC500.
You can reach me at AdamMichaels05. You can always follow us on the main event pod. Check us out on Saturday when we drop our podcast, and we will be back next week right here on the main event on 1580 The Fanatic.
See ya.